Okay, for this week's technical, what we're going to take a look at is a program called Luminar Neo. Now, Luminar has a series of programs. This is the latest in their collection. Each program does essentially the same thing. It uses an AI base to make changes to the photograph. Now, let me contrast this a little bit to Perfectly Clear and Imagen AI. It's very similar to Perfectly Clear. The controls are different. There are presets that you can use for images, as well as making your own changes to it. Where both of these differ from Imagen AI is these aren't your programs or your photos that it was programmed with. So this is a general series of presets, basically, that are applied to your image. Also, unlike Imagen AI, you don't get the image back with the changes that you can modify. Now, what do I mean by that? With Imagen AI, it takes your Lightroom image and tweaks it the same way you would by using the sliders. So what you get back from Imagen AI is a modified image, but done the way you would have done it. And by that I mean you'd go into the develop window and you would make modifications to the image. These make modifications to the image, but you're not really getting it back the same way. That said, I also want to point out that if you notice a difference in my voice, we had that wonderful cloud of wildfire material come down. My sinuses didn't take too well to it, so I apologize for my tone. But let's take a look here. Now, I have an image of a woman, but look at what it's got in here for the presets. It's not really what I would choose for it. It's basically giving us everything. So let's go down here to Easy Portraits. We'll start off with the presets, and then we'll look at the ways that we can modify the images directly. So hovering over it, you can see what the change is, and you can change its strength. All right, there's vignette, fade. All right, fades out the background. Tack sharp. Now here's an interesting one. We turn it off, turn it on. You're not noticing a lot of changes to it. It's a subtle change. High key as opposed to low key, which is basically the brightness. And again, this lets you make modifications to your image. There are a bunch of presets in here. For those of you who remember what film looked like, that I didn't roll the film back into the canister correctly and it got some extra laying on it, so it's got that burnt layer to it. And some other really odd things that somebody thought would be good to add to the image. But let's move on to the edits. So you have tools and you have edits. Edits are kind of like what we saw with Perfectly Clear. We got the shine, we've got skin defect removal, we've got the normal develop stuff that you would see in Lightroom, and a couple of other different ones in here, including a little noise reduction, some sharpness. Now you notice it says this little AI after it. So the AI will determine where the face is. You can lighten the face. You can do what Perfectly Clear would do, which is narrow the face. And with those two settings, she went from looking like this to looking like this. Hate these enhancements, etc. Let's go back into the tools. What I do like are these contrast controls, because it allows you a little bit more control over the contrast. As you can see, the best one to use for this particular image would be midtones. So let's reset everything. Just use the midtone one and look at how much more pop there is to the image. Again, this is not something that's going to replace hand retouching. It's just going to get you a little bit further along to the hand retouch. You have a dodge and burn in here. I never use this for dodge and burn. I always go into Photoshop, but that's my personal preference. If you wanted to, you could use this with its brush tool to do some dodge and burn in here. You change your controls down here to lighten, darken, or erase the change that you've made. There's some other things in here that you can do which are kind of cool with this image. You can add mist to it. You can add a dramatic effect. Basically, what you're doing is taking a different look at the way color grading and things work. All right, dramatic, little local contrast, and it's a completely different image. It's still her. It's a completely different image. Turn that off down here. That's where we started, and that's where we ended up. You can change the mood. Which, again, kind of like some of the presets that I've seen, have titles to it which mean absolutely nothing. You're not going to look at it and go, oh, yeah, it looks like Santa Barbara to me. But a good one down here, especially if you've done, turn the toning off, especially if you've done a photograph with a big depth of field, or you're using something like an iPhone, you can add some bokeh to it. So if you take a look at what's red right now, it's her, but the background isn't. So it's found her. Let's see if we can do something in here. Because ideally what you would like in any image, that's a little better. So depth correction actually goes into the negatives for this. What you're trying to do is pull her away from the background. So if we turn this off for a second, you can see that that background was very close to her. So there wasn't much I could do with depth of field. By playing with this bokeh, I've got a little bit of an area right in there that's not quite right. But that's what the brush is for. But by adding that extra little bokeh in the back, you can see it pulls her out just a little bit more. It also seems to change the lighting a little bit here as well. Now, this is a combination of the portrait bokeh having a focus around her and a defocus around the background. Again, another tool in here that you can actually change the shape of the person. Or if you wanted to just change the belly, you can do that as well. We'll drag it up here all the way so we can see. Not sure it's got it quite in the right spot, but you get the idea. So this is another AI-based tool that can help you get a little bit further along in your process as you're changing images. It has its good things and it has its bad things. I do like some of the things like the high key, low key stuff. You also have a section here called My Presets. And you can use the changes to make a preset of your own that you can then apply. For example, I did a preset in here to set things up to make it look a little bit more dramatic for bodybuilding. And you can see what it does immediately is it sharpened that background because the bodybuilding photos are done differently as far as the depth of field in them. But look at how much more detail there is to her outfit and to her. So let's zoom in on the face here a little bit. See a little better. All right, the original image with the changes that I came in with, I ended up blurring her a little bit. Now you can see it's much sharper. And the male one I made even more detailed. Again, you can really see the detail to her sweater or her sweater dress. So it's a way of sharpening the images for me. If I were doing a bodybuilding one, to make sure that they were tack sharp for those images. Again, this would be a step in my process. Now, for me, I go into Lightroom, I make the initial changes there. Then I kick it out to Photoshop. Photoshop, I'll do my dodge and burn stuff, but I will do an individual layer for each of the tools that I want to use to get me a little bit closer along. So I'll clone the layer that I came in with. Then I'll go to a tool like this. I will make the changes to it. I may adjust the amount a little bit. Maybe I think it's too much. I just want to tighten it up a little bit. So I'll come in here and I'll do this. Then I'll come out, merge the layers if I like what I see. Otherwise, I'll make extra modifications in Photoshop to the change that came across. And then after that, I will just go on to the next layer, do my dodge and burn, make sure that the muscles come out, etc. So that's how I use these tools in general. But again, this tool has some really nice things to it. There's some extras that you can, that are either free to add or you can purchase. Upscale is great if you have something that's a little pixelated. In other words, you didn't get quite the amount of detail that you wanted. There's a noise bit in here, which you saw in my menu. And that allows you to cut back on any noise that went into the image, which is especially helpful if you are shooting in a higher ISO. And so have gotten some extra noise in the image itself. But that's what I got for you for this technical one this week. Of course, on Thursday, I'll post my take on the good and bad about using a tool like this, or this specific one. And then next week, we'll move on to yet another tool. So I hope you guys can get something out of this, and I hope this helps you figure out which tools resonate with you without you having to buy and test them yourself. And I'll talk to you all next week.